So we'll be looking at error, accuracy, and precision in GIS, Geographical Information System, and these three are very important because until quite recently, people who were actually involved in GIS they paid little attention to the problems caused by the error, accuracy, and imprecision, especially in the spatial data set. So there was an awareness that all data suffers from inaccuracy and imprecision, but the propagation or the effects of GIS problems and solutions were not considered so much. And then major introduction in the field, such as Tomlin's GIS and cartographic modeling, and Starr and John's GIS and introduction, and Keith analytical and computer cartography, barely mention about these issues like error, accuracy, and precision. Because whenever you are dealing with GIS or any other system where data is involved, the first question somebody would ask is, what is the accuracy of your data? What is how precise it is? But the situation has changed. It is now generally recognized that these three can make or break your GIS project. Error, if they are left unchecked, this can make the result of a GIS analysis almost useless or worthless. Because GIS gained its power mainly by collating and cross-referencing various types of data by location. So they are particularly useful because they can integrate many discrete data set within a single system. This is the beauty of GIS. This is what GIS does. Various discrete data set come integration into single system. But every time a new data set is imported, again the errors which is there with this new data set will be inherited. So these may combine and mix with the errors which were already there in the database in unpredictable way. And the discussion was actually started with the Barrow's book, that is Principle of GIS for Land Resource Assessment. And now this issue is taken up by various texts in GIS. The key point here is, even though this error can disrupt your GIS analysis, there are always certain ways to keep error to minimum. How? By careful planning and certain methods to estimate its effect on GIS solutions. First of all, the awareness of the problem of error has also is the useful part, and it has actually benefited the GIS practitioners because they are more sensitive now to potential limitations of GIS to reach impossibly accurate and precise solutions. Let us see some definition before we go ahead. First, the basic question you should know, or basic difference you should know, is the accuracy and precision. What is the difference between it? So accuracy is the degree to which information on a map or in a digital data set matches the true or accepted values. See, if your location is this, and now the map is showing your location is this, so this is the accuracy error, right? Accuracy is with respect to the true or accepted value. So the degree to which the information on a map or in a digital database matches the matching with the true value, the accuracy is this. So it's an issue pertaining to the quality of the data. Most importantly, quality of the data and the number of errors which are contained in this data set or a map. But while we are talking about GIS database, so it is possible to consider the horizontal also and vertical accuracy also with respect to GIS, geographic position, as well as the attribute also, the properties, the conceptual and logical accuracy. All these are involved in the accuracy terms. So the level of accuracy required for particular applications, it varies. Highly accurate data can be very difficult and costly to produce and compile. Then we come to the precision. What is precision? Precision refers to the level of measurement and the exactness of description in a GIS database. So precise locational data may measure position to a fraction of a unit, and precise attribute information may specify the characteristic of features in more detail. So it is important to realize that this precise data, no matter how carefully measured, may be inaccurate, right? Surveyors may make mistakes or data may be entered into database incorrectly. This may be also a problem. So the level of precision required for particular application also varies. And engineering projects such as road and utility construction require very precise information measured in the millimeter or tenth of an inch. So what I'm trying to explain is 2.3 is certain value. Now 2.32 is more precise. 2.3265 is very precise. And if you increase more precision values, then these values are said to be more precise. Though 2.3 may not be the actual value. Actual value may be say 4.2. So there is a difference between these two. But still, whenever we are addressing it 2.3, even if it is not accurate, the precision says that it is precise to this point of value. Okay. So demographic analysis of marketing or electoral trends can often make do with less, say for closest zip code or present boundary. Some errors may be acceptable here. And highly precise data can be very difficult and costly to connect again. So carefully surveyed location needed by utility companies to record the location of pumps, wires, and pipes and transformers. They cost $5 to $20 per point to connect. That is huge. So high precision does not indicate high accuracy, nor does high accuracy imply high precision. However, this high accuracy and high precision, they both are expensive, and just be aware that GIS practitioners are not always consistent in their use of these terms. And sometimes the terms are used almost interchangeably, and this should be guarded against. And two additional terms are used as well, that is data quality, which refers to the relative accuracy and precision of a particular GIS database, data quality. And these facts are often documented in data quality reports, you'll see that. Then comes the error. This error encompasses both the imprecision of the data and its inaccuracies. So there can be various types of errors. The positional error is often of great concern in GIS because we are dealing with GIS that is actually dealing with the spatial data. But error can actually affect many different characteristics of the information which are stored in database. So first is your positional accuracy and precision. So this applies to both horizontal and vertical positions, positional accuracy and precision. The accuracy and precision are a function of the scale at which a map was created. So positional accuracy very much dependent on the scale. So the mapping standard employed say in USGS, it specifies that the requirement for meeting horizontal accuracy as 90% of all measurable points must be within 1/30th of an inch for map at a scale of 1:20,000 or larger, and 1/50th of an inch of a map at scale which are smaller than 1:20,000. These are the accuracy standards for various scale maps as indicated by USGS, right? Say for 1:1200, that accuracy may be should be between plus minus 3.33 feet, while for 1:1 million it can go up to 166 or 167. So this means that when we see a point on a map, we have its probable location within that area. The same applies to lines also, and you need to be aware that the dangers of false accuracy and false precision, that is reading location information from a map to levels of accuracy and precision beyond which they were created. So this is a danger, in computer system that allow users to pan and zoom at will to an infinite number of scales. So accuracy and precision are tied to the original map scale actually, and do not change even if the user zooms in and out. Zooming in and out can, however, mislead the user into believing falsely that the accuracy and precision has improved. Then we come to the accuracy and precision of attribute. So the non-spatial data, which is linked to a location, may also be inaccurate or imprecise. So inaccuracies in this case may result from mistakes of many sorts. What these sorts can be? The non-spatial data can also vary greatly in precision. Precise attribute information describes phenomena in detail. For example, a precise description of a person which is living at, say, a particular address might include gender, age, income, occupation, level of education, and many other characteristics. So an imprecise description might include just income or just gender, not others. So we come to this conceptual accuracy and precision. So GIS depends upon the abstraction and classification of real-world phenomena. So the users determine what amount of information is used and how it is classified into appropriate categories. Sometimes user may use inappropriate categories or misclassify information. So for example, classifying cities by voting behavior would probably be an ineffective way to study the fertility patterns, would it be? So failing to classify power lines by voltage and would limit the effectiveness of GIS design to manage electrical, utilities infrastructure. So even if the correct categories are employed, data may be misclassified. Say a study of drainage system may involve classifying streams and rivers by order. That is, when a particular drainage channel fits within the overall tributary network. So individual channels may be misclassified if tributaries are miscounted. Yet some studies might not require such a precise categorization of stream order at all, but we are looking at those which require precise one. So all they need is the location and names of all streams and rivers, regardless of the order. Then the logical accuracy and precision. So information stored in a database can be employed illogically. What it means is permission might be given to build a residential subdivision on a floodplain unless the user compares the proposed plan or floodplain maps. Then again, building may be possible on some portion of the floodplain, but the user will not know unless variations in flood potentials also have been recorded and are used in the comparison. So the point is that the information stored in GIS database must be used and compared carefully if it is to yield useful results. GIS systems are typically enabled to warn the user if inappropriate comparisons are being made and if their data are being used incorrectly. So some rules for use can be incorporated in GIS design as the expert systems. But the developers still need to make sure that the rules employed match the characteristics of the real world phenomena they are modeling. And finally, it would be a mistake to believe that highly accurate and highly precise information is needed for every GIS application. It is not the case. The need of accuracy and precision will vary radically depending on the type of information coded and the level of measurement needed for a particular application. And the user must determine what will work. Excessive accuracy and precision are not only costly, but can cause considerable details also. So what are the sources of inaccuracy and imprecision? There are many sources that may affect the quality of the GIS database. So some are quite obvious. Few of them will be automatically identified by the GIS itself. So it's your responsibility, of course. So particular care should be devoted to checking for errors because GIS are quite capable of lulling the users into the false sense of accuracy and precision unwarranted by the data available. For example, smooth change in the boundary, contour lines, and the step change of choropath maps are elegant misrepresentation of reality. In fact, these features are often vague, gradual, and fuzzy. So there is an inherent imprecision in cartography that begins with the projection process, and its necessary distortion of some of the data and imprecision that may continue through the entire GIS process. So recognition of error and importantly what level of error is tolerable and affordable must be acknowledged and accounted for by say GIS users. So Burroughs divides sources of error into three main categories. He says obvious sources of error resulting from natural variation or from original measurements, error arising through the processing, and these three, generally errors of the first two types are easier to detect than those of the third because errors arising through processing can be quite subtle and may be difficult to identify. And Burrow further divided these main groups into several subcategories. Obvious source of error, age of data. That means data sources may simply be too old to be useful or relevant to current GIS projects. Say past collections standard may be unknown, non-existent, or not currently acceptable. For example, John Wesley Powell's 19th century survey data of Grand Canyon lacks the precision of data that can be developed and used today. So, additionally, much of the information base may have subsequently changed through erosion, through deposition, and other geomorphic processes also. Despite the power of GIS, reliable on old data may unknowingly skew, bias, or sometimes even negate the results. Then comes the aerial cover. Data on a given area may be completely lacking, or only partial levels of information will be available for use in GIS project. For instance, vegetation or soil maps may be incomplete at borders and transition zones and fail to accurately portray the reality. And another example may be the lack of remote sensing data in certain part of the world due to almost, continuous cloud cover. You may have uniform, accurate coverage may not be available actually, and the user must decide what level of generalization is necessary or whether further collection of data is actually required. Then comes the map scale. The obvious error comes from map scale, that is the ability to show detail in a map is determined by its scale. So map with a scale of say 1:1000 can illustrate much finer points of data than the small scale map, for example 1:25 100,000. So scale restricts type, quantity and quality of data. So one must match the appropriate scale of the level of details required in the project, and enlarging a small scale map does not increase the level of accuracy or detail. Then comes the density of observation. So the number of observations within an area is a guide to data reliability and should be known by the map user. The number of observation. So an insufficient number of observation may not provide the level of resolution required to adequately perform the spatial analysis and determine the pattern GIS projects seek to resolve or define. So a case in point, if the contour line interval on a map is say 40 feet resolution, below this level is not accurately possible. That is, we are talking about the resolution, number of density of observations which are taken. The lines on a map are in a generalization based on the interval of recorded data. Thus, the closer the sampling interval, the more accurate the portrait data will be. Then comes the relevance, obvious errors. One more part is relevance. So quite often the desired data regarding a site or area may not exist, and surrogate data may have to be used instead. So a valid relationship must exist between the surrogate and the phenomena it is used to study, but even then the error may creep in because the phenomena is not being measured directly. A local example of the use of surrogate data are habitat studies of the golden cheeked warblers in the hill country. It is very costly and disturbing to the birds to inventory these habitats through direct field of observation. But the warblers prefer to live in the stands of old growth kedar. So these stands can be identified from aerial photographs. The density of this juniperus can be used as a surrogate measure of the density of warbler. But of course, some areas of cedar may uninhibited to a very high density. So these areas will be missed when aerial photographs are used to tabulate the habitats. Another example of surrogate data are electronic signals from remote sensing that are used to estimate vegetation cover, soil types, erosion susceptibility, and many other characteristics. So the data is being obtained by an indirect method. So sensors on the satellite do not see trees, but only certain digital signature, typically of trees and vegetations comes. Sometimes these signatures are recorded by satellites even when the trees and vegetations are not present. These are called false positives, and are not recorded when the trees and vegetations are not present. These are false negatives. So due to the cost of gathering on-site information, surrogate data is often substituted. The user must understand variations may occur, and although assumptions may be valid, they may not necessarily be accurate. Then comes the format. The other things which comes is the format. So format is also the obvious error can come from format. So method of formatting digital information for transmission, storage, and processing may introduce error in the data. So conversion of the scale, projection, changing from raster to vector, and resolution size of pixels, these are all examples of possible areas for format error. So expediency and cost often require data reformation to the lowest common denominator for transmission used by multiple GIS. So multiple conversions from one format to another may create a Rashad effect, similar to making copies of the copy of a photocopy machine. So additionally, international standards for cartographic data transmission, storage, and retrieval are not fully implemented. Then comes the accessibility. Accessibility to data is not equal. What is open and readily available in one country may be restricted or classified or unobtainable in another. So prior to the breakup of the former Soviet Union, a common highway map that is taken for granted in the country was considered classified information and unobtainable to most people. So military restriction, interagency rivalry, privacy laws, and economic factors may restrict data availability or the level of accuracy in the data. Then comes the cost. So extensive and reliable data is often quite expensive to obtain or convert. And initiating new collection of data may be too expensive for the benefit gained in the particular GIS project, and the project managers have to balance their desire for accuracy as the cost of the information. So true accuracy is expensive and maybe unaffordable for small projects. So we have taken the first part, how the errors may creep in as suggested by Bruno, and we'll take all of these in the later session also. Thank you so much.